guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rebecca. If you haven't been here before, welcome. So today's video is going to look a little different because I am in Italy. So if you watched my last video, you know that I'm currently on vacation, but I wanted to make a little video to talk about season 3 episode 9 of Hulu's Only Murders in the Building, because I know that it's coming out on Monday, the last episode of the season, and we're going to find out who the murderer is. So I wanted to share my thoughts, feelings, and opinions before that dropped. And yeah, so today we're going to be talking about Hulu's Only Murders in the Building, Italy version. So please forgive the fact that this video is going to look a little different. It's not going to have as much editing. It's going to be more like stream of consciousness speaking, and then I'm going to post it. And if you like it, you like it. And if you don't like it, you don't have to watch it, and that's okay. I totally understand. But for those of you who just wanted to hear my opinion on episode 9 of Only Murders in the Building, let's get into it. So this episode is called 30. And we later learn that that is because not only is it the last 30 minutes before Ben died, but also it is Mabel's 30th birthday. So happy birthday to Mabel. Just to go over the episode quickly, Mabel is narrating this episode, and we can see that she wakes up, she's having a dream about giving birth, and she ends up getting 3 babies. One is Oliver, one is Charles, and one is a microphone for the podcast. And the nurse ends up saying, "Congrats, you're having a podcast." So that was super weird. She ends up waking up next to Oliver's bed. He just had a heart attack, but he's okay. And he wants to be able to go back to work so that he can, put his play into action, especially since Loretta has been arrested. But both Mabel and Charles are worried about him and ask the doctors to run a few extra tests, but they let them know that he is totally fine and that whatever they did to him, he's gonna be okay. They end up back at Charles's apartment with their little murder board. They're trying to figure out who the killer is. Obviously, they are still suspicious of Dickie because they don't have any sort of alibi for him yet. And they are trying to beat the clock and figure out who the murderer is before Loretta's court hearing. So we also know that Charles said that he accounted for all the hankies in the cast, but we do know that not only the cast members received hankies, because KT got one, Howard got one, I'm assuming both producers got one, Cliff and Donna, as well as possibly Dickie. So we're kind of trying to figure out whose hankies are left. Next, we see that Joy's wedding dress arrives. This is pretty rough for Charles. He's not happy about this. And they kind of move past this pretty quickly, but he's definitely upset about it. They decide that they're going to interview Dickie to figure out whether he might be the murderer or whether he's innocent, because obviously Loretta thinks that he did it because she decided to turn herself in so that he didn't have to go to jail. So Dickie gives us some new information, basically saying that Ben would disappear every Thursday at a place called Snitches Get Stitches, where he'd hang with his 5 whores. And Dickie says that the night that Ben was murdered, pushed down the elevator shaft, Dickie was actually out of the building. He was dressed in the Cobra costume looking for these said whores. And he says that if you guys think the killer is still out there, I should probably go call my lawyer. And he tells them where to look. He even shows them a photo of him in the Cobra costume, passed out, video footage. So they're pretty sure that he didn't kill Ben at least the second time around because he has an alibi. Yeah, so they go to meet these 5 whores. Oliver brings a ladder with him. He says that the ladder is the new turkey. Nobody will stop anybody who has a ladder from going into the back of any place. So they get there. That plan doesn't work. They end up getting into the back anyway. And the 5 whores are actually 5 seamstresses, and they would have a sewing club every Thursday night with Ben. And Ben claimed that that sewing kept him off of those crazy street drugs. They ended up telling the trio that there was a phone call that they received from Ben and that he sounded really upset and worked up, said that everyone was out to get him, and asked when they were arriving because he saved them seats at the show. We hear Oliver knocking in the background in the phone call, so we know around when this was. And so this is when they decide that they need to put together the last 30 minutes of Ben's life, since they have a general idea of when this was, and they're trying to figure out who the murderer was. So they kind of go through everyone. KT saw Ben first, kind of yelled at him for being late because he was up all night with the seamstress ladies trying to finish the hankies for the cast as a gift. We then see Dickie, who offers Ben schmackeries and says they're so good and that his mother ordered them special with rattles. And he kind of like puts it underneath Ben's nose because Ben says, let me smell it. And then kind of like shoves it over there. And Ben's like, stop, like get away from me. Because we know that Ben has like this weird thing with cookies. We then learn that Dickie was talking to Loretta on stage and she was basically encouraging him to quit and tell Ben that he wouldn't work for him anymore. She was having a really motherly moment, and he even made a like checklist of why, like bullets, why he should quit working for Ben. And Ben ends up walking up and finding them in cahoots, pulls the paper out of Dickie's hand and realizes that his brother is quote unquote abandoning him. So he's really upset about this, and it ends up kind of driving a wedge between him and Dickie. They're fighting. He says that he's now no bro, no longer co-bro. And we do hear him say, I know you always thought co-bro was yours, but I am co-bro. So we do hear him say that like Dickie created co-bro. So once again, we're hearing that Ben stole it. We see that Howard goes to the office door that was locked, KT's office, to try and get the broom. Ben and Loretta have their fight call. We once again see them basically physically fighting as the trio kind of puts together what happened that night. Ben fighting with her, physically grabbing her and telling her to stay out of his life because she's trying to drive a wedge between him and Dickie, and she says that he treats Dickie terribly, and he ends up like grabbing her and shaking her, and she tells him to like get off of her, and she calls him a fucking pig. Then we see Charles punch Ben in the face. And then we see that Donna is the next to see Ben and says that she had to give Cliff a pep talk. And after that, she told Ben to basically do whatever he needed to do to be ready to get on stage. She said, be nice to Ben, do whatever it takes to be ready for the show. After that, Ben goes to his dressing room. Taubert knocks on the door and says, do you want to shoot some behind the scenes footage? This is what you hired me for. And Ben's like, no, I'm not an animal in your zoo. Get away from me. So we see this like fight between the two of them. And then Ben fires Taubert and Taubert walks away pretty upset. And we also see that Ben took Taubert's camera. And then lastly, we see the footage of Ben talking to the plate of cookies, and the trio finally figures out who he was talking to. Mabel listens to Oliver do the same thing with dips and then realizes Ben's not talking to a person, he's talking to cookies. Now, one of the most important clues that's come together this episode is that Howard has put together the pieces of paper, the shredded pieces of paper, and we realize that it is Maxine's review of Oliver's original show. It says that Ben is the weak link, that he is as wooden as the lighthouse he stood on. And we also know that Donna said that exact line to Oliver at the SITS probe, and Oliver remembers this too. So pretty quickly it becomes clear that the trio's most likely suspect is now Donna. So their best guess is that Donna realized, like got an early copy of the review, saw that the show was going to be a failure, was so terrified that Cliff's career was going to be ruined because of this, and then in order to save it, decided to murder Ben, the weak link. She shredded the review once she read it. She saw the rat poison in KT's office, took it, put it on a cookie, put that in Ben's room, and then encouraged him to do whatever he needed to do to be ready for the show. So this is definitely something that we could see being plausible, but also we know the show always has a last minute twist, so it's unlikely that Donna is the murderer or is the only murderer, considering that they've already like basically told us this. So I have a couple of other theories that we'll talk about in the theories section. So the trio decides that they've figured out who the murderer is. They're racing to the courthouse to get there before Loretta's, court hearing. They decide the quickest way to get in is for Mabel to put on Joy's wedding dress. So that is the explanation for why Mabel is in the wedding dress. They end up getting into the courthouse, and Oliver runs up to Loretta and he's like, you have to trust me. I know why you did this, but Dickie didn't do it. And she says that she does trust him. They have like a cute little moment where he's like, you look good in orange, and she's like, you look so nice in your suit. But then who do we see standing in the room? Donna. So that's kind of where we end off, and we can move into the theories section. So like I said, I think it's pretty unlikely that Donna is the murderer or the only murderer because of the fact that they've basically already told us this and we have one more episode. So there's bound to be some twists and turns that we do not see coming, or maybe that we do see coming, who knows. So part of my theory is that Donna didn't kill Ben, Cliff did. This would be pretty like point A to point B, make a lot of sense. But I think that part of the reason that Donna didn't murder Ben is because she never wanted Cliff to succeed. She was intentionally sabotaging the show. She purposely hired Oliver, who had the failed show in the past with Splash. She hired Ben Glenroy, who was this like chaotic actor figure who was likely to mess up. She was choosing people intentionally to have the show be a failure because she didn't want Cliff to be successful and then branch off away from her and have his independence. That is her little boy. She loves him. She wants him to be with her forever. She wants to protect him. And so maybe she thought the best way to do that was to keep him close to her. And the only way to do that was to sabotage his show, his first show. So then Cliff found the review. He is the one who shredded it, or maybe Donna shredded it to keep it away from him, but he had already seen it. He couldn't stand the fact that he might fail, so he poisoned Ben. He was showing Ben the cookies earlier, knew that Ben was kind of like a cookie addict, and really was trying to entice him to eat it, and then later on stowed the cookie in his room with the rat poison, and when that didn't work, he pushed him down the elevator. If Cliff is not the one who pushed him down the elevator, then it's possible that Donna pushed him down the elevator shaft after finding out that Cliff murdered Ben in an attempt to protect Cliff, knowing that since Ben came back to life, he might know who the murderer is. He might suspect that it was Cliff. He might suspect that the cookie was poisoned. She decided that the only way to protect her son was to murder Ben herself and then eventually take the fall if suspicion ever arose. The only other possible person I could think that it would be Taubert. There's been a lot of questions around Taubert's like loyalty, if he works for Cinda Canning, if he, would profit off of the fact that like he got to produce a show that basically showed the background of the last moments of Ben's life and like solved the murder. That would probably be pretty profitable as a documentary. And we know that there was a lot of like buzz that surrounded Ben's death. So I think that it's plausible that Taubert is a part of this. At the end of the day, though, I think that Donna and Cliff are the most likely suspects. As much as I still feel like Dickie could have played a part in it, especially because he said that he was covering up Ben's blood work in order to cover up the other things that Ben was taking. But then we also hear Ben say, or that we also hear the sewing ladies say that Ben was clean and that sewing was the only thing that kept him clean. So did Dickie know that Ben was clean and he was really covering up the results because he murdered him? I think that's kind of unlikely just because of the fact that like if Loretta doesn't go to jail and then Dickie does end up being the murderer, it kind of confuses everything, especially because that's her son and she loves him so much. I don't know if they would do that to her, but I do think it'd be interesting if they ended up saying like, no, Dickie poisoned Ben. He couldn't stand working for him anymore. He covered up the tox report because he claimed that Ben was taking all these crazy hard drugs. We learned from all these nice old ladies that Ben was not taking drugs, that sewing kept him off of those street drugs, and Dickie was so thrown when Ben came back to life that he went out drinking that night, kind of trying to drown his sadness. So I think that would make a lot of sense, but I don't think they're going to go in that direction. And then if Cliff were to push Ben or Donna were to push Ben down the elevator shaft in order to protect the show, once they realized that like they finally were free of Ben and that the show might actually be a success, that's when they decided, no, Ben has to die. So I think that would be my like preferred ending, but like I said, I don't think that's the most likely. I think it's going to be some sort of mother-son, Cliff and Donna situation. So yeah, that is what I think for the last episode. I know this has been kind of a weird video. I know it's not how I usually do it, but I appreciate you all for watching. If you watched this video, if you like it, make sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button down below. I also wanted to thank you all so much for helping me hit 1,000 subscribers. We finally did it. I'm so excited. It's amazing. watching, and I owe the biggest thank you to all of you for subscribing. So if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button. It's always good to, you know, continue moving on and upwards. I'm sure I'll figure out what my next goal is soon. I really appreciate you all. Thank you so much, and thank you for watching this video. I probably will not be posting again until I get back from vacation. So I'm going to be doing the closeout of episode 10 and the season and my thoughts probably a week later after the show has already aired, so the next week. But let me know if you have any questions about the show, any things you want me to review. There's obviously this idea of like a Moriarty character, so if you want me to do a video deep diving into all 3 seasons and trying to figure out who this Moriarty character could be, let me know. We could gather all the clues that I've gathered within the past 3 seasons, as well as, you know, doing some sleuthing on Reddit and see what people have found and make our best guesses if there is a season 4 or season 5, which is what I think the producers said. They wanted 5 seasons, and there is some sort of overarching evil character that's kind of pulling the strings here. It would be really fun to try and guess who it is, so let me know if you'd be interested in that. And once again, comment down below who you think the murderer is. Do you think it's Cliff? Do you think it's Donna? Do you think it's Howard? Who knows? I love you guys, and I will see you next week. Well, I won't see you next week. I'll see you the week after next week with the final video, season 3, episode 10 of Hulu's Only Murders in the Building. And I hope you love the finale. So talk to you guys later. Bye.